We must solve for both indoor environmental air quality and the cost of achieving energy efficiency at the same time. Given the health and economic and climate crisis we're facing today, it would be irresponsible not to do so. But how do we solve for these seemingly contradictory goals of better indoor air quality and energy efficiency, especially relevant for buildings in our communities exposed to higher levels of outside air pollution, such as the borough of the Bronx? Our esteemed panelists are here just to help us answer some of those questions this afternoon.
Cost and energy reduction, for example, indoor air quality and comfort within facilities. So our core business, we have three commodities: electric, steam, and gas. Historically, the utilities relationship with our customers has been very transactional. Now it's more of a choice where we're trying to help collectively design programs and solutions to help reduce the impacts of carbon emissions and climate change. Our customers are very diverse, very aging infrastructure. There's no place like New York City. When you touch down here from overseas or anywhere you look around, it's just something very unique and special. I think that we could all agree with that. Our growth strategy at the utility, we're investing $1.5 billion with a B in energy efficiency and heating electrification by 2025. Right, so that just really, really speaks to our commitment towards this clean energy future. And again, we want to become a trusted energy advisor for our customers. So less transactional, more collaborative, with the intention and the goal of reducing harmful pollutants into our environment. Next slide, please. So this is kind of a layout of our energy efficiency and demand management group. We have different areas that we work in to, again, collaboratively achieve our goals. So energy efficiency is focused on reduction in energy usage over time. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide, but those four core programs that you see underneath really represent the energy efficiency department. So we have our residential market segment, which is 1 to 4 family units, our multifamily, which is 5 units and above, so those larger multifamily buildings that you see all across our cityscape. Small to medium businesses is, we determine eligibility, but it's an average peak demand of 300 kW and below. And think about our livelihood, right? The foundation, the backbone of our economy, your restaurants, your bodegas, your barbershops, your nail salons, your fitness centers, everything that we were really missing when COVID hit last year represents that small to medium business community. Then we have our large commercial and industrial. So those are our largest end users. Really big buildings, really incredible, depending on who they're built by and what upgrades they have made. But, that's our city line, right? You have the Empire State Building. You have the new World Trade Center downtown. All the large buildings, Barclays Center, sporting complexes represent our large CNI program. And one thing that all of our programs are adopting across the spectrum is a clean heat program. So we're electrifying the heating load so that we could further advance our efforts towards mitigating climate change. And basically what a heat pump is a piece of equipment that transfers heat from one place to another, like a refrigerator. And heat pumps are 1.5 to 4 times more efficient than your conventional boiler. So really excited to get behind that. It's a statewide effort, and Con Edison is at the forefront of that transition. Now, when we shift over to the demand management side of the house, we have our non-wire solutions, which is really designed to manage demand in our network, where there are areas that are we see significant load growth and may potentially need to do a traditional infrastructure upgrade. With non-wire solutions, we focus on the electric side of the energy system. And what we're really trying to do is to further build out of traditional infrastructure, whether it be a transformer, capacitor upgrade, a load transfer, et cetera, to non-traditional solutions such as customer-side solutions, so energy efficiency, demand response. You have distributed energy resource integration that we apply collectively in a package to really defer that build-out.
And another area that we do a lot of work in indoor air pollutants is around allergens. So allergens are especially important indoor air pollutant to address, particularly if someone in your home has asthma. Asthma attacks can be dangerous, of course, to human health, but also economically really expensive. Missed school, work, hospital visits, extensive medical bills can really set a family back. So, having regular home maintenance to address mold, moisture, cracks, leaks, pests are all important in creating a safe environment. And like asthma, lead pollution disproportionately affects children of color. Here in New York City, Asian children have the most risk to at home lead exposure, twice the size of their relative population here in New York. And New York State as a whole has the highest rate of childhood lead poisoning due to older building stock. Next slide, please. So the point is, we're all in the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat. We definitely have different access to resources. Next slide, please. And so our homes can either keep us safe or they can make us more vulnerable. An unhealthy home can make us more vulnerable because of the polluting heating and cooling systems, the inefficient building appliances and systems. The building envelope is oftentimes not well insulated. You are exposed to extreme heat or cold. There's pests, rodents, mold, leakages, poor ventilation, or none at all, smoking, or higher energy costs due to poor performance. On the other side, a healthy home would use renewable energy sources, particularly for heating and cooling. And we'll talk about how to do that in a few more slides. Non-polluting cooking appliances like electric or induction stoves. You would have a well-insulated and weatherized house. You would have a properly ventilated and filtered system or filtration system, and HEPA is the kind of gold standard of that. Regular maintenance, a comfortable indoor temperature, so we call that thermal comfort, and your energy costs would be proportional to your use. Next slide, please. And while we're improving the health of our homes, we also have to make sure that we're addressing what's called energy insecurity in the process. And energy insecurity is essentially the inability to meet your basic household energy needs, which arise from unhealthy homes, high energy costs, or energy related coping strategies, which is something like turning off your air conditioner even though there's a heat wave in order to prevent the household from having an unaffordable energy bill. Next slide, please. So similarly to unhealthy versus healthy homes, homes can either be energy insecure or energy secure. So an energy insecure home is going to have, it's going to be less insulated. You're going to have to choose between turning on your air conditioner or doing or running your oxygen machine, which is a pretty drastic example that is here, but is also a reality that some people face. You're going to be more subject to utility shutoffs, brownouts, etc. Whereas an energy secure home is going to be well cared for, it's going to be well ventilated, well insulated. You're going to have access to the energy that you need, and it's going to be affordable enough for you to use it. Next slide, please. So how do we do this here at WEACT? Next slide. We focus on adaptation and resilience. So one thing that we always encourage people is to sign up for the Weatherization Assistance Program. That's a state program that helps people to make energy efficiency improvements to their homes. We also support community solar, which allows people to sign up for a local solar project and get a discount on their electricity bills. Our program, Community Power, actually put solar installation on the Carver houses, which is New York City public housing complex, and is providing community solar to residents in nearby affordable housing.
The EPA, you can see here that New York City has elevated levels of particulates, elevated levels of ozone, particularly in the summer months. And it's classified as a non-attainment area by the EPA due to the high levels of ozone. So what that means is we cannot just assume that outdoor air is fresh, and we need to be cognizant of the outdoor air quality if we're going to use the outdoor air to maintain indoor air quality. Next slide, please. So of course, just to summarize that, fresh air isn't always so fresh. We have to be cognizant of local pollutant sources from adjacent areas. And by using outdoor air as a way to maintain indoor air quality, there's no self-contained solution for buildings to maintain indoor air quality. Up until more recently, which I want to get into the next 4 or 5 slides. Next slide, please. So alternatively, we can introduce air cleaning into a building system. Next slide, please. So this air cleaning system, one example of it is there's lots of air cleaning technologies in the market, and a lot of them do certain things really well. Sorbent-based air cleaning is unique in that it has the capacity to capture all contaminants, such as CO2. A sorbent-based technology enables you to do is it enables you to scale back how much ventilation you're bringing in. The same phenomena is used in spacecraft. It's also used in submarines, and now it's commercially available for buildings. And typically, these air cleaning systems integrate into the existing infrastructure simply by tying into some common return air system, which is what the schematic on the left shows you. Next slide, please. So what's inside this air cleaning system? I mentioned it's a molecular or sorbent-based material that consists of various synthetic polymers and amines that have been engineered to capture a variety of contaminants that are known to exist in typical commercial and residential building environments. So these contaminants, an example of those contaminants are listed on the right. And what sorbent-based air cleaning technology enables you to do is use clean recirculated air to offset outside air, and therefore save energy consumption while not compromising on indoor air quality, and in many instances, providing enhanced levels of indoor air quality due to the capacity to scrub to remove every single contaminant that's relevant to existing buildings. Next slide, please. So typically when we apply air cleaning in a building, we're reducing energy consumption due to the reduction in outside air. By doing so, there's a reduction in the total energy consumption, which enables buildings that are currently outside of compliance with Local Law 33 or Local Law 97. Air cleaning is a great idea to complying with local laws that are relevant to New York City. So you can see here that Local Law 33 is basically mandating that buildings achieve a certain level of efficiency. Using Energy Star as kind of the measurement of how efficient that building is. So typically with outside air reduction, using molecular air cleaning, you can see a 5 to 10 point reduction in the Energy Star score. So a point reduction means the building is more optimal. And then with Local Law 97, of course, there's a direct correlation between energy savings and carbon emissions reduced. So many buildings today many buildings that are currently consuming a lot of energy can avoid that by using air cleaning as well. Next slide, please. Air cleaning is kind of bundled into building codes in a variety of channels. One of them is ASHRAE. ASHRAE is industry standard for prescribing how much ventilation and how much air cleaning you need in a building.
that named environmental sustainability as our value. And we named this because taking care of the earth is essential for the survival of all of humanity, because communities of color are the most impacted by climate change, and that we must embed environmental sustainability within our solutions. And so we are heartened that in this process, so many groups, businesses, institutions aligned to this and believed in this. And so on the next slide, what does it mean? It means that this economic democracy approach has these values, but fundamentally it takes a democracy, which is deep community led decision making, from design to implementation to evaluation, that this deep community process is aligned to economy, that it is aligned to reducing the racial wealth gap. It is aligned to minority-owned businesses, quote unquote, and BIPOC populations, and giving them entrepreneurship opportunities and economic control of their neighborhoods. But at the foremost, it really reminds us that the economic part also has a social component. At our recent um, convening, where we had over 75 Bronxites discuss energy and environment, one of the report outs from a small group discussion was that energy isn't just watts or kilos, but it's the feeling that you get when power goes out or when your plans have to change. But it's also the feeling that one has when they're empowered to create, support, and scale. If we could look at that bullseye, if we could model after convenings like this, where businesses that are thinking about equity and impact, like USL, if we could model that, not only are we going to have the material change, but we also are going to have the qualitative change that is important for having environmental justice. And we believe that economic democracy builds that. So on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about our model. So on the next slide, what you'll see is that there's a hexagon. It takes a multi-stakeholder approach to transform systems, as we talked about. It will take a multi-stakeholder approach of folks committed to a movement for environmental justice to achieve systems transformation. And for us, it's many pieces, and I'm going through them fast, but when we think of great businesses like we heard about Uptown Solar, right? The manufacturing, servicing component. Where's our innovation factories and hubs that not only upskill, but build those cooperatives? The learning centers that we need to think more about the little quiz that we took, the excellent quiz that we took, where we learn more about the deep root causes of um, inequality, inequity, and disparities. The Bronx Exchange, which I'll, in the conclusion of this presentation in a few moments, I'll talk about, where we support the revenue generation of minority owned businesses in order to sustain economically our economy. Who does the matchmaking to contract opportunities? Who makes sure that, green economy businesses like Uptown Solar that are BIPOC on, who makes sure that they have the contract opportunities in order to maintain workforce or community or worker ownership or whatever equity that it creates? So our hexagon here that I briefly talked about represents that. I want to go to the next slide to get into the work with the final minutes that I have here. We talked about these contradictions, right, that we have in the Bronx. And so those of you that, do this work day in, day out are quite familiar with these statistics. But for us, there's an opportunity to intervene on these. It's an opportunity. That's why we're all here on this panel, to intervene and transform the emissions challenge, to change that, not 62 ranking, and to think about retrofitting and the workforce that can build capital and wealth, not just jobs and numbers created of jobs to transform. And what those jobs are not just of quality, but that those jobs have self-determination and alignment to values that the community holds. That these stats here are not just a challenge, that entrepreneurs like Fatu and the panelists that came before me believe that there is a way forward, that this will not be the outcomes long term, but that we would transform them. So on the next slide, I want to talk quickly about programming. So a few years ago, we had a healthy buildings program that really focused on reducing asthma triggers, right? Worked on greenhouse gas emissions. How do we reduce those? Energy bills, which was a concern of NYCHA residents and local residents in the Northwest Bronx, and as well as water conservation. That leadership would be local, and so that tenant organizers would address the social determinants of health that those of us that work in this field know is so important. That resident leadership is key, and that lastly, at a baseline, we could create quality jobs and wealth in the community by working with Bronx-based businesses